my people, how are you doing? I hope you're having a damn good day. Welcome back to the channel, and today we will be talking about Manchester United and potentially the new system that Erik ten Hag goes with, the 4-3-3 formation, a system that I think they have been building up to the entirety of last season, and I think this upcoming season we will be seeing that a lot more. So I think they have the correct personnel, or they're going to be getting the correct personnel. They've got the goalkeeper, they've got more legs in the midfield in Mason Mount. I think they will be getting Rasmus Højlund. So all the pieces are slowly falling into place for Erik ten Hag, and that's why I think that this system would suit how Manchester United are looking to play, how we're going to need to play if we want to try and win Premier League titles, Champions Leagues, and so on, and fight for titles every season. So going through the team, of course, we've got Marcus Rashford. I know he is a striker technically, but he's better off the left. So in FIFA, currently, I have him as a striker. That's what I'm trying to say. But he is better off the left, and I think in this system, him playing off the left with a Rasmus Højlund down the middle would work out quite well. You can also play him as a striker in the system and then play either a Garnacho or a Sancho on the left. Fair dues, fair plays. You do whatever you must. But we have Rashford, we have Martial, Antony, of course, the good front three. Bruno Fernandes, Casemiro, Mason Money Mounts. I love that. Love the signing. We do have Luke Shaw, of course. We've got Martinez, Varane, and of course Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Or you could go with Delo. Immaterial, it's up to you, of course. And then, of course, we've got the new man, Andre Onana. If you haven't seen the individual player tactics videos, check them out. Of course, I go into further depth, or a bit more depth, in those videos, talking about the individual players like Mason Mount, like Andre Onana, and how you would want to play with them in the respective systems in order to get the best out of them and try and recreate a more realistic approach. So like I say, if you haven't seen those videos, check them out. They are on the channel, they are on the playlist. I think it's called Player Tactics. So, of course, there we go. On the bench, though, we have Garnacho, we've got Sancho, Eriksen, Fred, Tom Heaton, Dalot, and Lindelof. And then in the reserves, we have some fairly good players in Diallo, Malacia, Harry Maguire, of course, Elanga, and some names that don't need to be mentioned. So yes, as you can see here, just looking at the formation, we have got the current 4-3-3. As for the tactics now tactics, this is very important. I believe that Erik ten Hag is going to progress and revolutionize his team, of course. So press after loss of possession, hit the counter press, hit the you are not having 1 minute on this ball where you can think for yourself. So the minute you lose the ball, there's players that are being very proactive, reactive to the situation at hand, and they're going to try and win the ball back as fast as possible. We saw glimpses of this last season for Manchester United, but of course, we just didn't play the right system, I feel. So this is why I've more or less created this set of tactics for you to try and recreate. For if you are playing a Manchester United career mode, your first season, you can start off with the 4-2-3-1 and then eventually progress, or even just have this set of tactics as like an alternative set of tactics for you to use. As for the width, we wanted set to 35, of course, nice, compact, defensively tight, no balls in behind, no balls through breaking lines, no nothing. You have Casemiro sweeping up in front of the front four. You have Martinez and Varane just towering in, winning aerial duels, winning ground duels, everything. And then, of course, you've got your fullbacks. In this case, it's Wan-Bissaka and Luke Shaw, who are fantastic defensively. And, of course, Luke Shaw going forward is elite. Probably the best left back in the Premier League last season. Personal opinion, let me know down below what you think and how you disagree with me, because that's normally what people do. As for the depth, though, this is where it's vastly different from last season. We're going to be playing a 75 depth, which is very high, almost in line with the opposition's set of strikers or wingers or full forwards. So it's going to be you're going to be very high up, but you also are going to be susceptible to the through ball, over the top, long balls, and so on. But this is why we have Varane and Martinez, and as well as those players, we'll have Aaron Wan-Bissaka to get back and hopefully defend and so on. So of course, with the high line comes pros and cons. That is the cons, but the pros are you just get to squeeze and suffocate your opposition in their own half. Make sure that the ball doesn't even leave their half from time to time. Get the quick headers back in, trigger counter attacks, trigger counter press, everything. So it does work, and of course you can also have a few offside plays go your way. As for the offensive build-up and so on, the build-up play is set to slow, and of course transcreation is set to possession. Of course, Ten Hag, he has been looking to play a more possession-based game, control the ball, have at least 70% of the ball in games. Of course, we didn't really see that much last season, especially against the bigger teams. Ten Hag was quite happy to let the opposition have the ball and then hit the counter attack. But I think moving forward, it's been a year since Ten Hag's come in, and it takes some time to implement his style of play. And I mean, I've seen quite a few training videos, and like the boys look like they more or less know what they're doing. And the whole team, or the team as a whole, I should say, is more or less on the same page. So I think we'll be seeing a more dominant Manchester United team in games this upcoming season. As for the width, though, of course, Ten Hag likes having his wingers wide and then cuts inside, hugging the touch lines on either end, spreading the opposition's defense, pulling them apart, making sure that there's spaces for Bruno Fernandes, Eriksen last season, but Mason Mount this season, to run into, and of course, space for your striker to work with. And of course, in this case, it's Anthony Martial. In other cases, it could be a Rasmus Højlund or a Marcus Rashford. Those instructions will slightly change based on the player, but I think more or less the principle of everything will stay the same. And then players in the box, we have it set to 7. So you'll have a few players in and around the box waiting to receive the ball or waiting to collect the ball from a loose ball possession or something like that. Just recycle it, fire it back in, potentially score some goals. As for corners and free kicks, we both have it set to 4. No need to tell you exactly why, but it's just enough players in the box for you to score. Okay, talking about the instructions, of course, we've got the signing of the summer, I believe, in Andre Onana. He is set to come for crosses and be a sweeper keeper. You want him to be more involved in the game. You want to have the ball at his feet from time to time. And what I have noticed is, if you are winning a game 1 or 2-0, the opposition in FIFA tend to press you a lot more late on in the games. And his passing stats are really, really good. Of course, he's one of the best sweeper keepers in the world, right? And when they press you, you have a Marcus Rashford as an outlet or an Anthony as an outlet from time to time. You can easily spray the ball over the entirety of the opposition and damn well get it to Marcus Rashford for a quick counter-attack. And of course, they are quite fast. So it can lead to some nice late goals as well, some heartbreaking goals to concede, but some nice goals for you to score. So I think Onana would be perfect. Honestly. As for Martinez and Varane, now Martinez, I've gone against what I normally say. Keep your centre backs just normal. But in this situation, I tried this out and I think it works really, really well. So I've gone with Martinez to join the attack and step up, right? It creates his personality in the game, his aggressive nature, his ability to be on the ball and pass it and spray it and find these great, acute angled passes through breaking lines. And just, find your forwards. And if you're watching the game above, I really feel like it showed what Martinez gives Man United in a game in real life. Of course, we're trying to recreate a realistic set of tactics. So this is how I recreate Martinez's personality in the game. And what's nice about him is he will sometimes take the ball and just drive into the midfield, building a nice DM base, more or less, with Casemiro and Martinez linking up. And then it just allows an overload in so many areas on the field, aka your midfield, and it creates nice spaces for a Rashford to run into, or a Martinez, not a Martinez, a Fernandes or a Mount, or an Anthony or somebody like that that's just looking for the small half spaces just to work their magic and potentially score some goals for you. And then as for Varane, he is going to be your furthest back centre back / defender, of course, and he's just going to sweep things up. He's going to play more of a sweeper per se. With Martinez charging slightly higher up the field from time to time. As for your fullbacks, though, Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Shaw, they have slightly different tactics. Aaron Wan-Bissaka is more or less set to the base of everything. Sorry, I was supposed to put this to step up. You want him to be aggressive. It recreates his personality more. He's quite happy to go to ground, slide tackle, and make the opposition have to work incredibly hard just to beat him. But at the same time, I don't want him consistently making overlapping runs and so on. That's what you want Luke Shaw for. So as for the attacking runs, it sets to balance. So if Shaw sometimes stays back, Aaron Wan-Bissaka can and will go forward, but you don't want him just to think, okay, that's the only thing I need to do, because he's more of a defender than what he is an attacking fullback. As for interception, it's set to normal, and then as for the run type, you want it on mixed. So he can be an inverted or an overlapping fullback. Aaron Wan-Bissaka is a better overlapping fullback. I think if it's Dalot, have it on inverted because he can interchange passes in the midfield and get things going. But more or less, for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, have it on mixed. You want that nice leeway, per se, of what he can and can't do. And then as for Shaw, he's set to join the attack have a mixed attacking run. Now, Luke Shaw is brilliant at making the inverted runs, but he's also really good at creating space for Rashford to work with by overlapping him and firing the ball across the baseline of the field and, getting assists and so on. So you want him to also be on a mixed attack, and then he is set to stick to position. You don't want him stepping up too much because then it's too many players out of position, and that leads to goals conceded and you hating my tactics. So don't do that. Moving on to Casemiro, though, slightly different role to what he had in the 4-2-3-1. He is set to cut passing lanes and have a balanced attack. I think in the 4-2-3-1 he was set to stay back while attacking. And what I noticed with watching the preseason game, of course, the midfield was very fluid in terms of your DM, which was Kobe Mainoo in that game. He was sometimes playing where Bruno Fernandes was. Mason Mount was sometimes playing where Casemiro was. So you want a very fluid looking approach to your midfield. So you don't really want Casemiro just to always be the furthest back player, because even last season he wasn't really that. So yes, you have it set to a balanced attack. Interception set to normal. He is set to cover wing, so when a Luke Shaw or an Aaron Wan-Bissaka go roaming forward, he will be the guy that can slip in, potentially plays a right back or a centre back or even a left back from time to time, depending on which player is out of position. So you want him to be the utility man that's playing deep. And speaking of playing deep, he is going to be a deep line playmaker. Of course, at Real Madrid, we didn't really see Casemiro spraying balls left, right, and centre, but last season we did. Last season, the Casemiro ball to the left wing, which was more times than not Marcus Rashford, was damn well elite at times. So he's going to be a deep line playmaker going forward. And I think he could do that job really, really well. Of course, it's not like the most well-known Casemiro trait, but it can be a very good ability to have in FIFA 23, of course. As for Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes, slightly different variations as well. We have Mason Mount set to his balanced, basic attacking support, as well as his support on crosses. You want him in and around the box from time to time, making late runs into the box. We did see that in the preseason game as well, where he did start on the left-hand side of the midfield. Although there are rumours that he might start on the right. But I'm just like, why would you want to break up that triangle of Rashford, Mount, and Shaw? Like, that would be great chemistry off the bat. And I think it could work out really, really well. And then, of course, he is set to aggressive interceptions. He is the guy that triggers the counter press and the quick press of the opposition. I mean, we saw quite a few times last season. We saw quite a few times in the preseason game, I should say, that Mount was the first man to trigger and press and run forward and make sure that everybody's doing their job. Of course, Bruno Fernandes is in this team, so he will also have a similar job to that. But Mason Mount's main differentiating factor is his ability to drift wide. I believe you would want that to happen so it can create space for Rashford as well. So not only will you have an underlapping or an overlapping fullback, but you'll have Mason Mount, who can play as a winger in that area, occupying that space from time to time and allowing Rashford to cut inside and get off shots, because Rashford is the talisman of this team going forward. Right. And then we move on to Bruno Fernandes. Again, balanced attack, balanced crossing runs. You want him in and around the box, rotating play, making sure the players are in the correct positions, making sure that he is operating in the little half spaces that are created from the overlapping runs from the fullbacks, the width of the midfield, and so on. He is also set to aggressive interceptions, and then he is set to free roam. So he will drift wide and fire in crosses, of course. It's another good trait that Mason Mount has, but he is going to be allowed to do slightly more than Mason Mount. He's going to be covering every blade of grass. You could say he's going to cover every blade of grass on this right-hand side alongside Antony, and he can interchange positions from time to time with Antony, of course. And speaking of the man, the myth, the legend from Brazil, he is set to come back on defense, stay wide. Of course, Antony is elite at just hugging the touchline, operating in that little half space. No. And speaking of the man, the myth, the legend from Brazil, Antony, he is set to come back on defense, stay wide, have a balanced support on runs, and get into the box, and of course have aggressive interceptions. He's got an elite work rate. He's always coming back on defense. He's always helping out his fullback, which is why I've tried to recreate that. He's also really good at staying wide. I mean, for Ajax, he was elite. Manchester United last season, he had some elite moments. Hopefully, consistency can be a factor in this upcoming season, and people can stop hating on him, because I think he's actually really good. He just needs to, just develop a little bit more. Of course, he is still young. He's 22 or 23. But of course, the 100 million price tag on his head doesn't really help him. But yes, this is how you get the best out of Antony, in my opinion, in FIFA 23. Then, as for Anthony Martial, which could be a Rashford, which could be a Rasmus Højlund, but we're going with a Martial here. He's set to drift wide, a very Martial-esque traits, drifting wide, interchanging play with Rashford from time to time. His attacking runs are set to mix, so you don't want him to be a target man or just getting behind. I would say if it was Rashford, it would be drift wide and then getting behind, because Rashford has elite pace, whereas Martial not so much. And then his interceptions are set to normal. You don't want to tire him out too much. And then he's also set to come back on defense for his defensive support. You want him linking up with the midfield. And I think all the strikers that will potentially play in this team, they're all going to be told, you need to link up a bit more. I mean, there were times where we saw Martial, Rashford, even Sancho when he played in the preseason game, they dropped all the way down to like a DM position just to get involved in the play, link up play, pull centre backs out of position for wingers to operate into those open spaces. So whether it's Rasmus Højlund, Martial, or Rashford, I think they're all going to be told you need to come back on defence and link up play a bit more. So yes, that's Martial. Like I say, if it's Rashford, it's probably going to be getting behind. If it's Rasmus Højlund, I'd probably say he would be set to stay central, target a player, or be a target man, I should say, and of course come back on defense. But this is Martial, so he's set to mixed and then drift wide, of course. And then finally, the talisman of the team, Marcus Rashford. So Marcus Rashford, of course, he is set to stay forward, so he's going to be an out there ball, which is why I was mentioning him earlier with Onana. Very much what Alisson and Salah do. This will be an Onana and a Rashford, so it'll be even better because, of course, it's Manchester United. But he is set to stay forward, stay wide. Of course, Ten Hag likes his wingers being very wide. We have the tactics set to 75 width, and then they can be wide and then charge in and drive in, creating nice angles, and also space for your Mason Mounts and your Shaws or your Wan-Bissakas and your Bruno Fernandezes. I don't know. His support runs are set to balance, of course. You don't just want him always getting in behind you. You sometimes want him to come short, collect the ball, take a touch, take a dribble along the width of the field, I suppose, or the length of the field. There we go. And then, of course, you want him to get into the box. You want as many players in the box as possible. Of course, the tactics are set to 7, so we have a decent amount of players in the box occupying spaces. And then, of course, interceptions is set to normal. So, that's how it be. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button if you enjoyed these tactics. Let me know how you found these tactics, of course. And, of course, I hope you guys have a damn great day.